It's very satisfying living a life that adheres ethically as much as possible to the beliefs I have about equality. And so that's really what keeps me in the studio all the time. I'm Kenseth Armstead, and I've been making art in New York City since 1990. I have been interested in being an artist since I can earliest remember. All I ever wanted to do was draw. Now the tools that I use to draw with are steel or tar or large planks of wood, but in essence, I'm still drawing about things that either excite me or things that bother me. All of the work comes from this obsession with writing history. Some of the pieces are sad and tragic, and then some of them are beautiful and uplifting. It's a real privilege to be an artist and to be able to explore whatever it is that your view of the world could be. The work I have at BRIC is a work which is masterwork, Slaves of New York, 1776, and it looks at the number of slaves, 20,000 in the colony of New York at the time of the American Revolution. And so I make a physical representation of that, an emotional representation of that, and there's one duck feather for each slave in the colony of New York. That 1 in 10 persons in New York was a slave in 1776, and literally nobody considers New York a slave state, seemed to me to be really strange. When I found that fact out when I was reading, and I said to myself, well, that's not that many slaves. And then the next thought I had was like, are you crazy? That's 20,000 people, and I couldn't get my head around it. And I thought to myself, well, 1 slave is a lot of slavery, and it made me so mad that I ever had that thought. That's where that piece got born. I was like, slaves in New York, 1776, and that's definitely a masterwork piece because, you know, it isn't the slaves that made themselves slaves. People always ask me about the feathers. Why feathers? Obviously there's like birds of a feather flock together, bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, all these things like a feather in the cap that talk about value or hope or groups of people. And then I heard this one phrase, it's Emily Dickinson, which is that hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tunes without knowing the words and never stops at all. And when I made the piece for BRIC, I really just didn't know why I picked feathers to stand in for people. And I had to look backwards to sort of think about why I had done that, why that seemed natural, uncomfortable, but also very useful and emotional. Because it has to be emotional, it has to be something you respond to. But I hadn't made a statement myself as an artist emotionally, like how I felt. Masterwork, Slaves of New York, 1776, allowed a dialogue about the legacy of slavery in New York, but also about the legacy of the hypocrisy of our idea that New York is somehow, you know, this bastion of liberal intellectualism. If I've done it correctly, the lives and the labor of 20,000 sentient people in 1776 who were dehumanized are made clear to you. Many things in American history are things that we forget so that things can be smoothed over so people can get along. In order to make a better society, we have to have more empathy, and we have to be able to believe that there are more and more people who are human like us. It's impossible to have a society without prejudice, but it is possible to have a society that deals with the fact that we have difference. And I think that if we look at the history and we accept it, then it's possible to say that America is still a really great place, but that this really great place has work to do.